Violent extremism is growing in leaps and bounds across the globe, with youths being the main actors as well as the victims, manifested along a wide range of issues such as politics, religion, and gender relations. Its effects leaves an indelible negative mark on societies and generations. Cameroon is not left out of this global threat, with the Boko Haram insurgency as well as a crisis in the northwest and southwest regions, a telling testimony of man's inhumanity to man. What are the underlying factors behind violent extremism, and how can it be countered effectively? That will be our focus in this edition of the program, Hard Talk. Welcome back. Our guest is an acclaimed peace and youth advocate with over 10 years in the continuous quest for a violent-free society. The civil society and youth activist has worked with over 1 million people and coordinated more than 500 youth development and peace-building projects in Cameroon and abroad. The multiple award-winning father of prisoners currently serves as national coordinator of Local Youth Corner in Cameroon, an organization that champions youth action for peace. He also leads the Commonwealth Youth Peace Ambassadors Network, charged with coordinating over 500 young peace builders across the 53 countries which make up the Commonwealth. A prominent expert on peace building, this name is regularly present at high-level forums and workshops around the world. He was named the Commonwealth Young Person of the Year in 2016, where he was received by Queen Elizabeth II of England, just one of his numerous national and international recognitions. Join me to welcome Achaleke Christian Leke.
Thank you very much, Peter.
It's a big pleasure to have you.
Well, it's really my pleasure to be in the studio, and I've watched for a long time, and I'm very honored to have been invited to join this conversation.
All right. You are a young man in a peace business. Cameroon is in search of peace.
Yep.
It is even said that the head of state says that he's a beggar of peace. What is peace?
Well, you know, peace, the definition of peace is very not one size fits all, but to me, I think that peace is a situation where you are in harmony with yourself and in your community and doing everything to make it comfortable. And, you know, violence-free is one of the conversation, but, you know, it's not about the absence of war, which is peace. It's about yourself, your community, and ensuring that you don't hurt another person. I think it goes right to that basic level because that is where the culture for peace comes from. It starts from a bottom level to a national level to international level. So sometimes I don't prefer to give you know, maybe a tourist perspective of what peace is, because I've been working in the field. It's 14 years working in battlefields and working at the front line. So my understanding of it is very, very different.
And very complex.
Very complex, yes.
All right. Cameroon and the world at large is gripped by violent extremism, which is one of the main factors threatening peace. Yeah. What are the underlying factors which causes this form of extremism? Well,
you know, violent extremism, it's not a new conversation, but the term violent extremism is a new word, which has been in the corridors of peace and security for about a decade. And I've been fortunate to be in the center of proponing this conversation. So we have been part of the policy and practice of this. And working on the field, because, you know, violent extremism and terrorism are not the same thing. Not every violent extremist is a terrorist, but every terrorist is a violent extremist. So violent extremism, let me take it for what it means. It's about perpetrating violence in an extremist way. That's what it means. Now, being an extremist is not a bad thing, but when you use violence to achieve an extreme objective, that's what makes you, you know, a violent extremist. And now for you to become a terrorist where you're a violent extremist, it's based on the acts that you perform. So, and there are connotations and clear descriptions of what makes someone a violent extremist and a terrorist. So when you use media to showcase your killing, that's an act of terror. That's an act of terror. because you are moving beyond just the person you are hurting to hurting many more people. Psychologically. When you use strategies like suicide bombing, when you use strategies like hit and run, when you use strategies like, putting mines and all of that, bombing IEDs, that is categorized as terrorism. But unfortunately for the African continent, violent extremism and terrorism are all described by the West. And that is the interesting thing. So they are the ones who decide who is a terrorist or not, through international instruments and all of that. Countries will push you to say you are a violent extremist. Yes, but because you perform this act. But the drivers of this are very simple. I've had the opportunity to work on the field, on the ground, battlefield in northeast Nigeria. And I spent time there speaking to young people who've been part of Boko Haram, speaking to vigilantes, speaking to different group of people. And there are reasons why they engage in violent extremism is very simple.
Exactly. That was almost my
will say,
question.
I got into Boko Haram because I didn't have a job. Someone will say, I got into Boko Haram because I could not understand what they were saying. And some people call it illiteracy. Some would say it's because I'm poor. Some would say it's because the government is corrupt and we want to show them that we can push them to the wall to get things done. Some would say, bad governance, resources are not properly shared. I feel excluded, and that is why I'm being part of this. Some would say it is based on the fact that we want to form our caliphate. Like in the case of Boko Haram, we want to form our caliphate. We don't want that people should encroach, because we've seen that it is the Western way of living that is making corruption and everything, to be at the height. And no one would ever say it's a one reason that leads. Some people will say it's peer pressure. It's my friend that made me to feel that it is necessary to carry arms and something of that sort. And if you look at Anglophone crisis, if you look at the Far North region, all these are underlying push factors. And the factors are both push and pull. There are some that pull you. The issue of the fact that you are broke, and then someone is offering you 50,000 francs to carry a bag which contains an ID bomb, and you go and drop somewhere. So the issue of wanting to have resources pulls people to want to get. And if you look at it clearly, these acts are more prominent in places where economically, socially they are backward. If you go to the north, the far north of Cameroon, you would understand exactly why we have Boko Haram there, because the rate of literacy is very high, the rate of poverty is very high. I mean, everything makes them to feel that it is irrelevant for them to express their grievances in that format. And that's the issue, in that format. I'm speaking not like a theorist. I'm a practitioner, I'm a researcher. I teach in university, I'm a practitioner. So I have a balanced knowledge, and I've been on the field working with several of these kind of young people, speaking with them one-on-one, and they will tell you every day, it is because I felt I was excluded. It's because even at home, my mom was treating me as if I was useless. So it starts from the home right to, maybe grievances on the government. Some theories like Collier will say that it is greed and grievance that leads to violent extremism. That's a clear thing. Everything that concerns greed, you look at it, people, you want to make fast money. Grievances, you are angry at the government. So, I mean, if you use those two theories to look at the Anglophone crisis, you see it very clear. There are some people who pushed for this to happen because they were making money. You see, it's great. And they are making money. Yeah. And there are some people who want to eat because they say, oh, I wrote ENS, I failed, I was very intelligent, I have not been able to pass concours.
like what we saw during the major national dialogue, where some ex-fighters were outlining their grievances to the government.
So you see that these are very underlining. They might seem very simple, but because human being by nature has violence very deep in them, it takes a lot of grace to be able to work on this. And my experiences of working and helping some of them not to go back to violence, I think that I can speak with a lot of authority about this.
But now, there's what the government will call the legitimate use of force.
Yeah.
Can the legitimate use of force be used to quell down violent extremism? How responsible is the government, or is the government's use of maybe the military in trying to solve situations like this?
Actually, if you look at the growth of violent extremism, not the cause, the growth, military use of force is one of the reasons. because it goes a long way to increase or heighten the rate of delegitimizing the government to an extent where people start seeing themselves being more comfortable with another group of people than government because of the way in which force is exerted. But let me take you back to the conversation. You see, violent extremism from its initiation as a term came as a result of the fact that the war against terror failed. Now, after September 11, the US government declared what they called the war against terror, which brought in what they call counterterrorism. Now, this is a space I've also worked deep in, counterterrorism. Now, with counterterrorism, it means that you don't look at the root causes. It's fight, I fight me, I fight you. It's boom, boom. Now, when they worked on Al-Qaeda, boom, boom, fighting, killed Osama bin Laden, everything, and then what happened? ISIS sprung. They were like, it means something is wrong. At the same time, it is spreading to Somalia, it is spreading. If you go to Asia, you know, it's in Asia, there were bomb attacks, ISIS was everywhere, ideology was moving. Because people were using the fact that the American government and the West were using force, killing people, even sometimes, you know, a drone attack in weddings where some people are innocent, they instead radicalize them. Now, coming to our context, the use of force would never solve a violent extremist situation. Because counter-violent extremism now, which is the term that we are using in this new decade of 10 years, means that you are looking at the root causes of the violent extremism and providing solution to. So any form of violence will not work. It would never work. If they are using violence, it's not counter-violent extremism. No. It is counter-terrorism, which it has some level of legitimacy, but it has never worked. When you cut the head of a snake, a new head comes. When you kill someone, the person's brother get angry. I'm not saying that military might is wrong. I'm saying that in doing it should be done properly. You understand? It should be done properly. It should be done with a lot of powerful communication tool, which you will bear with me, many governments don't know how to communicate. And that's where they are failing. You know, even when you are wrong, you don't just say, I'm not wrong. You say, oh yeah, it seems as if we are wrong. Just give us some time, let us investigate, and we'll get back to you. And when you investigate, you see there are always bad seats, yeah? No one is taught in a military school to kill someone just like that. No one. Just like that, yeah. No one. So when other people are blaming, they should also think. No one is taught that way. It is based on emotions. It is based on their humanity. That, okay, Peter, you're my good friend. We're talking every day, then we went to the field to shoot, okay? A young person just comes and then stabs you and kills you. The next thing,
automatically react.
That is what you, that's the next thing. So it's the humanity of these persons that sometimes pushes them to do what they do. And there's a whole psychosocial issue around it. Some of them are suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic disorder, which makes you want to react very swiftly and violently over an issue. They were never taught that way in school. If anyone can prove me wrong on that, then they should show me. There's no training on military that says kill your civilian.
That's why they do that's why they always do human rights courses.
It's very important. The human rights courses are not very strong. I have led human rights courses for police in Cameroon with the British High Commission. I understand. When you speak to them, they are not bad people, but conditions push them where they are. And there's no young person who carries a gun who is a bad person. When you speak to them, if you speak to former fighters, you understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, sure.
Many of them are going through very difficult situations, which pushes them to what they are. Many of them were radicalized in a very crazy way by some people who usually are not at the forefront. You will hear some scholars who say that you cannot say poverty is the cause of violent extremism because of the fact that rich people are part of violent extremist group. They will say illiteracy is not the cause of violent extremism. That's what the West says. Yeah. Okay. I was
also look organizations like ISIS.
You
they are well-educated scholars
doctors and all of that.
Doctors. Yeah.
But at the forefront, you would not see a PhD holder carrying a gun. You will not. You will see an illiterate young person, a broken young person carrying a gun. Because at the end of the day, those very intelligent ones will not want to die. They want to keep radicalizing and giving purported preaching and all of that. And that's what happens. And that's what we continue to see. Look at our own case in the Anglophone world. That's the same thing. The ones who engage in, you know, messaging on the internet, you will not see them on the ground. They are abroad, okay? So, but there are young people on the ground who are performing what they are doing based on their personal conviction, which is a conviction which I believe that we need to look deep and say, how do we respond to each and every one of their grievances? I'm telling you, if we use that strategy, we are going to win so many souls rather than, you know, fighting. I know that's a counterattack. That's what happened. That's why I say, if it is counterterrorism, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because that's how it's supposed to work. At least, even the kind of weapons that the state uses, you know, they also respect international laws. And that's why if you see clearly, when COVID started and the UN Secretary General called for ceasefire, I was part of that process. Globally, the ceasefire process, conversation. Yeah. You see, the state changed their narrative. And we're talking about, okay, we are moving our troops, we want to protect our citizens. And that's why to date, you cannot hold the state for violating international law. That's it. Because they respected the call
for ceasefire.
And that's why even some of the separatist leaders, if you saw Ebenezer Kanga, for example, you know, did an open conversation on social media saying, okay, my troops will cease fire because we have a common enemy, which is COVID. Let's calm down so that health practitioners can go to where they can go to and all of that. I mean, this is just to tell you that no amount of military force, we have seen it, the US that has all the drones and everything, they could not stop Al-Qaeda from giving birth to ISIS.
Okay, now, you are part of the peace building makers, those who are active on the field. One will have the impression that you guys are either targeting the wrong people, or maybe you are just completely out of the picture, which explains the growing threat of violent extremism. Why is violent extremism so common, despite the fact that you have peacemakers or peace advocates on the ground?
I think it's because we don't have enough peacemakers. That's the first thing. I think secondly, because we are not valorizing the peacemakers. I think thirdly, we are not giving people the reason to become peacemakers. And I think fourthly, we are amplifying the narrative of violent offenders more than peacemakers. I tell you, international media is the same thing. If they kill 100 people in South Sudan, BBC shows
it's breaking news.
It's breaking news. They don't do breaking news about the fact that we've been able to transform prisoners. And that's where the issue is. Now, they have made violent extremism to be more juicy because the innate factor of every young person is to become popular. You understand? That drive of heroism, and that is what the media is giving to many of these people.
Which means the media has to change the narrative.
They have to change the narrative, and that's why I came for this conversation. You know, if you called me to come and talk about the bad things, I will never do that.
Sure.
Check my social media page. Check my conversation. I don't do. People have blamed me, but they do not know my job description.
Exactly.
Peace builders, our work is not to say they have killed 10 people in Kumba. That's not our job. Our job is to listen, do memos, look for solution. Check. I always tell people, what do I gain if I post a picture of a dead person, as to what do I gain when I do what can help people not to die tomorrow? And that's what we are not understanding. I say our role, I'm not a journalist. As a peace builder, I'm not a journalist. Everything I say will be taken differently because I have a legitimacy in a particular context. When you are a journalist, you can report the way you want to report. But we should be able to valorize and make this our role to be juicy. Exactly. Tell me, my brother, if young people were as violent as people were talking, do you think that we can even sit here? We make up 75% of this country. It means that if only 30% of us are violent, this country will not work.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's if you look at that narrative, it means that it's a 5% of this country, young people who are doing what they are doing, not even 5%, 2%. How can a 2% drive narrative? What is happening? Why are we letting it be? How many times have even our head of state in his speech applauded young people who are doing peace? We are not making it valuable. They are not making it juicy. You think when Nobel Peace Prize and all those things were sort of was for nothing? Do you know what it means for a person to be recognized for the good work you're doing and given visibility? What it does, it's a whole ripple effect. For the awards I've had as a young person, the training I've had, the learning I've had,
has inspired many others.
It has inspired many others. When we started this, I started in 2007. This is 14 years today. 2007, there were few organizations. As a volunteer, I could tell that there were few people who could even talk peace, who could understand. Many of the organizations talking peace now in the Anglophone regions only came because there's Anglophone crisis.
Because the crisis came, yeah.
You got what I mean? Because the crisis came, which is a good thing. We need to have many more of such, to an extent where an idle young person has an NGO where he can volunteer and then touch lives and then give them a sense of purpose. I grew up with a violent background. I'm a Fiango Kumba breed, 100%. You know, yeah. I have some of my friends that always say if they were alive today, they would be leaders of these things. Because they had lived with a lot of suffering, challenges.
How bad was Kumba at that time? How bad was Fiango in particular?
Our era, which is about 15 years ago, it was so different from now and before us. Before us, there was the issue of Fiemania, 419, which was very popular. Now, after the generation of 419, it came now to the generation of now fighting and violence, where each quarter had a group. And then, if your friend is in school, CCC, they beat you up, we come and go and fight that way. It was more of that. It was that kind of self-defense, but group. You go to football for CCC, they play finals. They refrain as he blows pip, he's already running and going because it's going to be something else. That is the way we grew up. Even parents will resort to fighting and say, okay, no, I'm sorry. We had what we call retu. Yeah. If you beat me today, every day we meet, we'll fight till 5 years to come. And we saw how people were stabbed, killed, people's houses were burnt. You know, seeing a shotgun is not new. We used to have friends who had shotgun on their waist, and they walk around with it. People who are celebrated in what they do. Someone has killed 2, 3 people, but has young girls around him. So, I mean, with that kind of understanding, what I'm doing is not by mistake. It's because I understood it from a very personal level. When I go to Kumba prison to work, 60% are my friends. They know me to my name. Which means that where they are, it's not really fault of their own, but it is the way in which a community was built. Now, this generation came where a new era came, where scamming came and all of that. People now could access funds. You will not go to Kumba now, maybe in my quarter, you will not go and see people fighting again. These young people now bought cars, and they are feeling fine. So it has been a generation thing. But I feel that some of us who left and have been able to keep the narrative and to show something different, it is really, really, really helping. Because I feel that a country which is in conflict needs more of listening to why people are doing what they are doing, rather than criticizing, rather than fighting over money, fighting over resources, to looking deep to how they will respond to this. When the US government sent its first set of military to the far north region, I was part of the conversation. It was not just military who carry guns. Some of them were teachers. Some of them were civil engineers to build schools.
And that was why I said it was a reconnaissance mission. It was not a mission to assist soldiers on the field.
That is it. Yeah. And people did not understand these things. But that was how strategic they were. And that is how I think that our state needs to think on how to position their role to rebuild trust, and to make people feel that even in times of war, people can still smile. They need to valorize these efforts. I'm telling you, in this country, how many times have you seen that they valorize the efforts of entrepreneurs? Because gender rights activists, entrepreneurs, climate change, all development stakeholders working for peace. Yeah. Because if entrepreneurs give us more job, we'll not talk about, say, I didn't have job and that's why I'm carrying guns.
Exactly.
There are some women who are radicalized only through rape.
Yeah.
When they kidnap girls in the far north, what happens to them? Those children. In the far north, we have a free school for children who were affected by Boko Haram. So I can tell you, I've spoken with them, I've been with them. We have 120 children that we're offering free school to. We have what we call the Salam School, re-educating children who are going through conflict. They take a young girl, they rape you, because in the culture you need to be pure before you get married. When they rape you several times, then you become useless. And then they say, okay, you see, you are useless now. Okay, you know what? You are a child. Go to the market. Just wear this thing and stand in the market before you just say, Allah, wafam, and that's it. And that's how you see children there, forcing them. And even in your introduction, you talked about young people being perpetrators and victims.
Yeah, perpetrators and victims.
But that narrative has moved from there. Young people are perpetrators, victims, and solution providers. Exactly. And that is why we have the UN Security Council Resolution 2250. I was fortunate to work with the UN Security Council on developing that process.
Now, tell us about that particular resolution, because it appears to be one of the groundbreaking efforts in countering violent extremism.
Yeah. So let me tell you the story. The conversation started 2012, 2013. Then I got to the international stage on peace and security. So 2014, 2015. The first one was I was invited by the Prince of Jordan, the Hashemite of Jordan, on what we call the Global Summit on Youth Peace and Security, which held in Amman in Jordan. Now, there was a policy document developed called the Amman Declaration on Youth Peace and Security. I was part of this process in the negotiations, preparations, everything. Now, we use that to design what we call the Global Youth Advocacy Team, bringing experts who have experience on the field to meet stakeholders who are members of the Security Council and other institutions who influence Security Council, FBI, CIA, and others, to tell them that you guys need to change your narrative. Why do you have to change your narrative? Because you see me, Christian, that you valorize. Christian is a peace builder, that's why you like him. But why don't you give a resolution to legitimize the work that Christian, that Edward Elman is doing, that Gwendolyn Myers is doing, that Victor Ochen, I mean, these are key peace builders across the world, Nobel Peace Prize nominees, young people. And we're like, okay, give us more proof. Then 2015, we kept pushing. We went to New York, we had meetings, and in these meetings, they'll say, Christian, can you tell this FBI team what you people are doing on Boko Haram? And when we share this experience, and that's how we build and build and build. Then we had the White House Summit on Counter-Violent Extremism, where I was a keynote speaker in the conversation, sharing my personal story of growing up in this kind of community and living this kind of change, and telling them that, you know what, you need to give us this resolution, because of the fact that it is important that young people participate. It is important that there is partnership. Do not see young people in the peace process to be just beneficiaries. See them as partners, because they have a lot to offer. Why? The people carrying guns are our friends. We suffer the same problems. We have been failed by the state. But why have we not carried arms? So give us the opportunity to speak with our peers, to engage with them, because they will listen to us better, especially in the African continent, where the younger generation is disconnecting from the older generation, where people feel that an older person has chopped money, is corrupt, you cannot talk to me. Yeah. That is it. That's the truth. That's what is happening.
There's that bitterness.
There's that bitterness.
In the minds
so
of
we need to bring young leaders to bridge that gap and create a connection and mentor our peers, so that by the time we are getting 50, they are getting to 30, and we can continue that baton to be a relay. And that was our conversation. And on the 9th of December 2015, I remember that I was in the house, and I received an email from one of my seniors in New York, and said, Christian, that conversation is going on now. I said, okay. And they told me later, Pam, it has been adopted. The resolutions came out. And since then, we've had two more resolutions. Since then, we've had 2419, which talks about young people in peace process. We've had 2535, which talks about protecting young people who are peace builders. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Because another thing why people don't want to get into peace is that it's very risky.
Sure.
Our friend Gilead Elman, Ismaila. That is my friend. She was placed on house arrest. She was on the kill list in her country for talking about what is right. And they struggled to smuggle her out of her country. Why would people want to get into this kind of business? Where you would take your head, you say, what am I doing this for? But they need to valorize the work that we do.
Now,
valorize every person.
Now, how are these resolutions shaping the peace advocacy process?
I mean, it is doing a lot. 2250, we call it our Bible, because for the first time, it gave clear cut. It is influencing financing for our work. I take, for example, 2018, I led an advocacy at the Commonwealth level head of government's meeting to get all heads of government to sign, to pledge that they are going to support this resolution. I led that process with young people. And I remember it took us lobbying. We started in 2017 with the youth ministers meeting. And in that meeting, I will go and speak to Minister of Jamaica. Mr. Minister, you know, your country has issue of gang violence. This thing makes sense to us. I go and speak to Nigeria. I speak to Ghana. I was speaking to this minister. I will call them by the side. We will do meetings and everything. It was a whole lobbying. The youth minister said, okay, we are going to tell our heads of state. When they met in London 2018, I was there. I didn't go as a Cameroon delegation because I was doing consultancy for the Commonwealth. I went as that person. The UN Special Envoy on Youth was there. We had a meeting. We prepared everything. And today, the Commonwealth, member states, British High Commission in Cameroon is funding peacebuilding in Cameroon, young peacebuilding, because of that effort. We mounted the pressure. Another thing, it is also giving us an opportunity for us to have more space to intervene, in the sense that it is changing government's perception to an extent where governments are now involving us in their decision-making process and development of strategies. I have been in strategy development for many other governments and institutions. They now look at our voice. Even in the governance of terrorism, we work with ENAM, training magistrates and others on how they have to govern issues of terrorism. So it is giving us more space to interact. The next thing, it is giving opportunity for more youth networks to be created. Because since many peacebuilding organizations are coming up, we are not talking about synergy. And that is how we created the Commonwealth Youth Peace Ambassadors Network. Today we have 1,500 member organizations from 53 countries. I'll be resigning because I've turned 30 already, you know, in few weeks to come, you know, to move on. But it has led to many more networks created, many more young people believing that, you know, the peace thing is as important as a human right actor, as a democracy actor, as an entrepreneurship actor, and that we can all work together to achieve. And that's why the issue of interdisciplinary approach in peace building is now very recommended. Young people are the ones doing that. That is bringing you, a journalist, bringing Mambe Church, who is a tech engineer, bringing entrepreneur, bringing agricultural person. Let's sit together and see, how can a journalist influence peace? How can you, agriculture, influence peace?
How can someone like Roland Fomunda, who is going to be the next guest in this program,
for example, influence peace? We look at that, and there's always a very interesting nexus in it, to an extent where, you know, even former fighters can do major agricultural projects and become different. We have seen what we've done in prisons. You know, we have key story of persons who, if they were released before our work in prison, will go back to arms. But today they are different.
Now, you have been meeting the government of Cameroon. We have two major conflicts in the country. What has been the response of the Cameroon government to the peace building initiatives that you have put in place?
The first thing I'll say is that the government is slow because of its bureaucracy. That's the first thing. They are pretty very good people that I've met, that I've spoken to. They are pretty some people who don't understand. And they don't understand because of lack of capacity. And that's why one of my advocacies I've done in the international community is that when you are bringing young people to train them, bring the senior people to train them. Because we are sick and tired of situations where you meet a politician and you are talking about violent extremism, he has no idea. You meet a parliamentarian, you want to be policy maker in a country which is at war, you need to research, you need to study. Now, international development stakeholders need to understand that these persons would never know. And when they don't know, they cannot invest. You need to train them. And one of my conversations with them is that, Mr. Minister, there's need for you to build your capacity. There's need for you to understand these things so that you can effectively articulate them and put them in your policies. That is one thing which is very important. Because sometimes when you watch some maybe politicians or whosoever speak, you realize that they don't know what they're talking about. They might use a word that will radicalize 100 people.
Yeah, sure.
You get what I mean? But what if capacity was built? We will not be talking about that thing. And that's why I'm very hopeful at our generation. I told the international community when we were creating the first youth mediators network in the world, it's in Cameroon. Cameroon is the first. I told them, we are doing this because I want that the day that I will be taken, like late Kofi Atta Annan, to go and do a mediation in a conflict zone, I will not just be doing it because I have 2 years, 10 years of experience. I'll be doing it because mediation has been my life from 30 to 60 years old. I don't think I'll make some of those mistakes. I want to be a leader, a minister or whatever who would not be just being there because of political ranks, but because I understand the plight of the people. And that has been our conversation. In many instances, we propose strategies. Some are taken, some delay to be taken. I will tell you, for peace building, there has been a lot of goodwill for some people. For example, Ministry of Youth has demonstrated goodwill. Now, there's the challenge of resources to be able to effectively implement this. Research showed that more than 70% of youth peacebuilding organizations operate under a yearly budget of $10,000. How do we work when the resources are not available? And that's another thing which we've been having conversations with the government. Yeah, you are giving us institutional support, but you need to invest in this because it's very important. Because we go to the field, we go to places where you cannot go to. And that's why today international organizations use us as third party. They will have money, say, okay, you can go to Baipanya. Yeah. We cannot go there. Yeah. Go because you know the terrain. And I think that's the kind of relationship that we need to have. During the national dialogue, it was the same thing. We raised our voice. We said, no, we should have a young person on the table. It happened. We had the National Youth Council president on the table. Fadimatu and I, we worked front and back to structure. Because I was not saying because I'm a peace expert, I have to be the one to sit on the table. It's not worth it.
No, sure.
But we can all give our contribution from a distance to say, you be our champion because you are the legitimate representative. And her presence on that table, my dear brother, meant a lot for youth peace and security. Because all over the world, national dialogues, young people are kept
They're always
around
excluded.
the home.
Yeah.
But we saw a young woman at the table. To me, it's a victory. Because if we keep pushing, being consistent, c'est pas donné. It's not for free. It is work, it is pushing. We'll have many more young people. And I feel that government needs to listen to our voices and our strategies. That in the design of their programs, they need to involve us more. And that's one thing I've been calling for a lot. And sometimes I wish that our voices can get to the most senior power that be. That they need to understand that when you want to design, see, something without young people is not for young people. They should not fool themselves. That you design a policy without young people in the presence of it, you want to give to young people, it will not be for us. They will not take it because they did not see themselves in that process. Legitimate people in that process. And this is the conversation that we've been having, at different levels. International organizations, senior people lending our voice, either through talking or through memos. And I always highlight, I'm not coming to you to tell you about that, government is killing people. That narrative will not take us anywhere.
Yeah, sure.
I'm coming to tell you that children are not going to school. Can we think of a strategy for re-education for children? I'm coming to tell you that in the far north, children are begging on the streets and they are recruited. This is what we have done. Can we do more? And that has always been our strategy. And that is what peace building recommends. I'm not a human rights activist, for the record.
Yeah.
People don't understand it. I'm not a human rights activist. I'm a peace builder. And by the nature of our job description, it is not our duty to say we condemn strongly. We don't do condemn strongly. When people are condemning strongly, we are doing strongly.
Yeah.
They talked about hate speech. Someone attacked me. Christian. I said, but this is me. We have produced the hate speech lexicon in Cameroon. We did that document with Peace Tech Lab in the US. The first ever document which had a compendium of hate speech. People were talking hate speech all over media. But as a researcher and a peace builder, it was not for me to come and sit on TV and say, oh, hate speech is bad. But we came up with a publication which gave, for example, the term lebamenda. We describe how it manifests and the process it takes to make someone to be pushed to the wall. When we did that, we let us say, okay, fine, let's do capacity building. We brought 30 influencers, including comedians, senior pastor, Kavino Walang, journalists, even our sister Harriet, who is currently sick. We brought 30 of them and trained them, musicians. We trained them to develop content. And today we have a whole song which talks about hate speech and all of that. It's played everywhere. And then from there now we did a second phase of the research, which is called hate speech and violent conflict. And today it's used like a Bible by many institutions to reflect. That is the kind of contribution we have to make. It's not talking and talking. And that's something we have in this country. People sit there, political analysts, they talk big talk. I have done theory and I've done practice. My master's degree is on conflict, security and development. I worked on the field. When it comes to policy, I've worked in the highest policy level in the world, which is the Security Council on our domain. I've worked on several international policies, even national. So I understand it differently. And then now practice. We've worked with victims, people that they see on TV. We've worked with them, from Nobel Peace Prize nominees to Nobel Peace Prize winners and all of that. And the experiences they share is that Christian, we've been able to do this impact because we did not join the blame game, the complaining game, the analysis game. We joined the game of looking for solution. And that's why my clarion call to those who are watching that when you come and sit on TV and you make the big speeches, you criticize reconstruction, where you have no idea. The reconstruction you have read is in a book. We have worked on the field on reconstruction. They criticize DDR. I'm among those who worked on developing the new DDR standard in Geneva. The new standard for DDR, which many of those people have never read. And Cameroon's model is in that document. I was in Geneva with the Secretary General for UN in Geneva, the person who was in charge of Geneva. We were on the same panel to launch that new strategy. I was the only young person there. And Cameroon's model is in that document. Because things have changed. Conflicts are no longer traditional. There is the social media component which has come, and that has changed everything the way it works. It has made it too complex, too different, to an extent where countries need to adapt. So, I mean, that is what we are talking about. I stand to be challenged by someone who has my kind of portfolio, who has worked on the field. I've worked with presidents, with princes, sharing my perspective and the perspective of many voices. In the Commonwealth, I have 1,500 organizations from Jamaica to Barbados who would give you their experiences raw because they're on the field. That is what I'm bringing to this table. It's not just about me. It's about these experiences. And if you look at the work that we do, you can tell that this is it, from research to practice. And it's academic. It's not a motivational book. It's an academic research.
Now, Christian, how do you go about this without hurting the main actors? For example, in the Anglophone crisis, the government will tell you that they have the legitimate use of force. They need to preserve. They need to preserve the national integrity and all of that. The separatists also will tell you that they have their own agenda to see how they can break away from Cameroon. Now, how do you succeed without, going through some of these? What the Frenchman would say, les sujets qui fâchent.
We go through them. The thing is that, as I said, the way peace builders work, we don't talk too much in public. We don't. There are some things which I cannot talk on TV.
Sure.
But the nature of our work is not showbiz. It's not being popular that you are talking everywhere. It's about strategy. I will tell you, if you watched the UN Security Council meeting on Cameroon, you watched it? The area formula.
Yeah, the area formula.
My name was mentioned in that meeting, if you watched. I worked with so many governments to prepare them. for that conversation. That is our role. It's not going to say government is worse, separatist fighter is worse. Our work is middleman. It's like diplomacy. You are middle.
And strictly independent.
And strictly independent. That's one thing. Strictly independent. You are in the middle. Because when you're in the middle, that's when they trust you. If they want human right, they will call someone that, oh, tell us about the human right thing. If they want solution, they will say, Christian, they will say, this person, they will say, there are many young people in Cameroon who are super in this field. They will be thinking about solution. And what happens is that there are times when we step on people's toes. But do you know what saves us? Our track record saves us. Our work in prison, for example, has saved us from a lot of stress. In the heart of the lockdown in Jakiri, we had COVID response in Jakiri.
Exactly, I was just coming to that because I wanted to ask, how has COVID-19 impacted peace advocacy? It should have been a very big challenge for you.
It was a very big challenge. But as I said, peace building, it's about strategies and values. And one of them is resilience building. And that is why our COVID response model that we designed was focused on building resilience. You get what I mean? Resilience in the sense that, what is resilience? That even if you are falling, you should be able to rise.
Yeah.
And then we put those strategies. We do not work as a humanitarian organization. No. Even in dashing something, we have a story in it. If you look at our sanitizer bottles, some of them, there's a message there. Let's work together towards fighting a common enemy. Check sanitizers, you'll never see that. Because Peacebuilding is not their build. And that is why you see our COVID response has been celebrated across the world. Because we imbibe those components in the process. If you see the bottling, we have bottles like that. Yeah. There's a dove there. We are telling you about peace from a very different way.
Exactly.
There's a dove, then we wrote there, let's work together towards fighting the common enemy.
Using a stone to shoot many birds.
That is what we did. Now, why did we start responding on COVID? When there is fear and panic, it affects inner peace. When you don't have inner peace, you can respond externally through violence. Just imagine that sanitizer, which used to be sold for 1,000, became 3,000. You don't have money. You need sanitizer. What happens? You start being aggrieved, right?
Yeah.
When we looked at this, we said, but this is breaking people. People might go to the earth. People might start blaming government. That government are not responding.
People were panicking.
Especially when they sit and they see US, where US government is giving $1,000 something for every citizen who is working or something of that sort. You turn look at a country, they are not giving. Oh, what kind of ballot country am I born in? And citizens will join, even corporates who have resources, they join in blasting. They have not understood that the US government, the US system, has worked for 200 years to become what it is today. We need to play our own role. We were not given a dime from the state. We decided to, we asked ourselves, should we close and go home? Because we cannot do conference, we cannot do workshop, we cannot go to prisons again, nothing. Then the vision came and we said, let us produce sanitizers and give to people for free. Let us help sensitize people. Let us try to fight misinformation and fake news around COVID, using speakers, translating messages into dialects. Let us design a mental health and psychosocial support program for it. And that is how we started. Today, our laboratory has produced 60,000 bottles of hand sanitizer. Now, there are people who carry big checks and go to Min Sante and give. Right?
Yeah.
But we young people, what did we do? We didn't have the big check. We didn't have. We mobilized our friends, young doctors, young pharmacists, volunteers. If you came to our office, if you come to our office now, you'll see.
It's a lab.
It's a lab. And we have bottles piled up. Some people say, but why are they doing this? But it was a dying moment. Should we fold our hands when people were producing and selling? I saw people becoming pharmacists who have never done pharmacies before. It's unethical. That is what pushes people to violence. That is greed. But we started responding. And today we have produced 60,000 bottles. Do the maths. If it is just 2,000, 60,000 bottles times 2,000 francs. Do the maths. and you will see how valuable young Cameroonians are, which we are not being supported. We are not being given that panache for what we do. And that is what we were able to push forward. It seemed like it affected our work, but it gave us a new sense of purpose. It taught us that a health pandemic can be able to affect peace and security. If you go on the field in the Northwest region, there were some places where they say they don't want to catch you with masks. There was misinformation. The separatists will say that, oh, that thing is done by government to do. These informations were there. Our team went to the heart of Jakiri when Jakiri was on lockdown. We went to Jakiri with sanitizers and bike with young people, and they came out clean without any scratch. We went to 35 communities in the Northwest region. In the Southwest, we went to hard-to-reach places. In the far North, similarly. And at the end of the day, 8 regions that will be covered. And we have about 90,000 people using our products for free. Thanks to people of goodwill, thanks to country meetings, thanks to some international, we have been able to do that. Until date, we keep doing what we are doing and hoping that we could always build peace in a different way. Peace building is not someone's name.
Now, where does peace building start?
Peace building starts from your heart, from you in person. You see, if you ever have the opportunity, which I hope someday comes, to speak to a young person who has carried arms before, you will understand that his journey towards violence started because he didn't have faith in himself. He didn't have love for himself. He was not at peace with himself. That is where it started. And that is how it continued to the different levels of radicalization until he starts carrying an arm. And that's why our advice is always that when we are talking about peace building, there's a lot of processes around self-realization. Even in prison, we have a whole component around personality development, reconciliation with yourself. And that's why the Christian or the religious aspect in building peace is very important. The role of the church, the role of the religious is very important because people have an attachment to it. There are people that when you tell that your pastor has said that do not carry that, and they'll never carry, right? We need to use such strength. There are people where you hear that the traditional ruler has said that no one should involve in that thing. They will not involve because they have that respect. But unfortunately, globalization is making many of these institutions losing their values to an extent where our chiefs cannot be as valorized as they were before. But I think that all hope is not lost. The education of the young ones today is very important. We need to educate them. We need to invest a lot of resources. We're talking about culture in intercultural and religious dialogue. That is the only thing that will break tribalism, which is destroying this country. That's the only thing that's going to break nepotism, which is destroying this country. The generation that is coming before us, Peter, you and I and many others today who are champions, need to ferry this message to our children. Needs to love one another, be it Beti or Buru or whatsoever. Because there's one thing that makes us the same. We are humans. No matter that, the day we die, we don't die as a tribe or a village. You go to where you have to go to. So, I mean, these messages need to be brought down to the younger generation. And we pray that by the time we leave, they should take to the younger ones.
All right, Christian, you are part of, you just mentioned that you were part of the designing of the new DDR format. Now, government has created these centers, and these centers, for some reason, best known to the critics, have had some reservations concerning the centers. What makes the what do you think should convince someone carrying a gun somewhere in Ashigasha or maybe somewhere in the bush in Akwaya to drop the arms and regain the centers that the government has created?
I think that the government needs to do it with a lot of goodwill. That's the one thing which is missing. And they need to invest a lot in communication. I said it right from day one. The world is around communication today. The world is around a Facebook post.
Sure.
So, they need to invest a lot in communication. They need to do a show of goodwill. They need to invest in monitoring and evaluation and reporting. You see, our government needs to start understanding that they owe us, the citizen, report. Because it helps them to build legitimacy. The model which they have, I would say, is a test. And there's a lot of investment. If you look at Operation Safe Corridor in Nigeria, which is done, is the digital process. It's a lot of billions in that process. And sometimes this money is being chopped. And the civilians or the people do not see how impactful that process is. How can you tell someone to go to a place where the person does not really see it to be better than where he is? Because that's what DJR means. DJR means that you're taking someone from a place and to a place which is more better. And you need to be able to convince that person with a lot of goodwill. And that is what I think has not perfectly been established. And that is why we are having this problem. And that's why the critics are saying what they are. I criticize that program. I criticize it myself. The difference between me and critics are saying that it was not right to have a DDR because you have not had ceasefire. You have not had, no.
The crisis has not come to
an end. Man, that is zero macabo.
Yeah.
If it was like that now, it would never have support from UNDP and the others. These people know these things better than many people who are talking on TV because they have done it from South Sudan to wheresoever. Things have changed. So the problem which I think that they need to do there, they need to effectively communicate, they need to show goodwill, they need to design the mechanism properly. The trainings that they offer, I think that they need to do what we call need-based assessment before they design the training. They'll just think that, oh, we give sewing machine. Sewing machine does not change someone. What is the life after sewing machine? You need to show. Like the one of the inmates that we have, Michael. Michael has been going through other prisons, talking to inmates now. They believe him. Because he's not a success, he has his workshop after 16 years in prison. In Yaoundé, which is very complex to have a place, and has 3 apprentices. Why will you not follow that kind of vision if you see such evidence? Why not?
Now, before we go, you have been working in the prisons.
Yeah.
What is bad in the prison system, and what proposals can you make to authorities to see how the prison systems could be more productive?
I think that what is absent is the rehabilitation process in prisons. They do not have facilities that can respond to their developing an alternative to what they used to do wrong. Just a gym alone can help an inmate become better. Because by the time he develops this muscle, when he leaves prison, he can become a bouncer, a bodyguard. And that's life. Just a poultry farm in prison can teach an inmate a lot. In Kumba prison, we have a poultry farm which can contain about 1,000 birds. What makes that poultry farm important is the fact that we are teaching people who are taking lives how to give life. You know, as a young person, you might kill something or kill someone because you don't know what it means to have a child, right?
Sure.
Our parents will say that. But I will tell you a story. I have a friend who is there in Kumba there. The superintendent called me and said, Christian, what is happening? What did you tell this guy that 5 a.m. the guy is going to check the birds? And I came and said, Grand frère, you don't show me what he mean for like something.
For like something.
And we came 3 months later and none of those birds had died. That is what makes our model different from any other model being done in prison. And that's why our work has been celebrated. It has been mentioned in the UN Security Council not once, not twice. Several times. It has been mentioned in the African Union Peace and Security Commission. Not once, not twice. Because there is that peace-building component. You will not see that teaching an inmate how to raise a fowl means that you are teaching how to give life. You will not see it because it's just fowl, they'll eat. But it was a whole culture. When we had a greenhouse farm in prison, there was a time we intentionally allowed the tomatoes to perish because we wanted to see the impact. And they said they feel like orphans, what they have invested. Many people resort to violence because they give in their best and it doesn't come out to be good. And then we engaged them into it, and when the farm came back, you saw them, they are happy and everything fine. Those are the kind of strategies that the state needs to apply. Our experience in prison is not for waste. We are not begging or forcing for our model to be used. I met with the governor of this thing in Kenya, the capital of Kenya, Mombasa.
Yeah, Mombasa.
That was the conversation we're having. You know, Christian, maybe we can pilot this. We've had emails right from the Caribbean. They want to pilot. Yeah.
All right, Christian, thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you, thank you.
And of course, we shall have you some other time to discuss other issues.
Thank you very much.
And to you, televiewers, it was a big pleasure having you in this edition of the program Hard Talk. Until next week, bye-bye.
Man, if you talk and talk.